I made a lot of mistakes in my PhD and I decided why not share the top 3 so you don't make them. I hope not. Let's find out. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of Research Advice. Here where I share tips and advice for the research life. And even though the topic of today is 3 mistakes I made in my PhD, I want to confess I've already made a mistake right now in deciding to shoot this video on probably the hottest day in the UK in history. But it's what we do for the content grind. So let's get back to the topic at hand, which is looking at 3 mistakes I made in my PhD. If you are new to the channel, before I forget, please do consider subscribing, liking, commenting on the video if you find it useful. But I will stop with that and get back to the content. First mistake I actually made. This is all about not seeking external help. Now, throughout my PhD, many of you may know the full story. If you don't, I'll put the card up here. Link in the video description about the difficulties I had and the numerous difficulties I had with my PhD. And because of that, the current channels at the time, the available channels of help weren't really that available. So I mean, supervisors, colleagues in the lab, colleagues in the school, in the faculty where I'm doing my research, all the kind of internal helps weren't that available whenever I needed it for the majority of the time. And my biggest mistake at the time is I just decided to wait and hope there was some magical situation that was going to reveal itself, or some magical research fairy come down and then find out that here is your funding or here is your thing that you need. And it was very unwise of me. It was very reactive as opposed to being proactive, something that I preach quite a lot now because I try to make sure I'm trying to make opportunities happen, not waiting for them to happen. So now looking back, and hopefully if you are facing this situation and you're waiting for your supervisor or your colleague, you can seek external help, and you are the PhD student, you are entitled to do that. And what I mean by that is, nowadays social media, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, you can get direct feedback from a prof, from a postdoc, from a fellow PhD student in your area like that. Something I wish I did a lot several years ago when I did my PhD. But even ResearchGate, even LinkedIn, even emailing the authors of the papers that you're modeling your research off, you may be able to get help through there. So if you are struggling to get help from the people that you're supposed to get help from, by the way, if you are, then try to seek these external helps. I've seen people, including myself, get tips from how to do gel electrophoresis and what's about from Instagram. I got a friend of mine, very close friend of mine, Joe, who you may know, who's been on the previous video. He found his postdoc through Twitter. So you never know how powerful these social media channels can be if you make use of it in the right way. So seek external help if the current situations where you're supposed to get help are not that available. Now my biggest mistake, and this is number 2, but one of my biggest mistakes I did a lot of because of extenuating circumstances, is trying to be a one-day wonder. Now what I mean by that, it makes me laugh every time I think about it, is that you try to cram in, and I did this a lot, try to cram in 5, 6, 7, 8 experiments in different laboratories and different methods in one, because you think, if I get it done like this, then that means it's done. And what actually 99% of the time, in terms of this risk-reward ratio, is not going to be in your favour. So if one mistake happens, you're delayed with the other experiment, then delayed with the other experiment. And sometimes a lot of it can just go to pot, just because you had one error on one of the experiments. Now, this is not to use this as incentive. Don't quote me to say, Aamir said you shouldn't do experiments in multiple times, you should do 1 experiment a day. No, it's when you're cramming too much that hasn't been prepped, hasn't been planned, hasn't been organised, and you're kind of hoping it's going to all work. Because it's a waste of time and resources, and it makes you feel worse, and then you try to compensate the day after or the day after that, and then you're kind of in a hamster wheel trying to catch up from the wasted resources and time that you spent trying to cram things together. Now, there's a phrase that I use quite a lot on Instagram. Again, if you're not following, you can do. Aamir.phd. And there's a quote from there that I use a lot, and I use on YouTube videos. And it's a quote of, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. It's actually from a movie that I watched called Shooter by Mark Wahlberg. And the reason why it was profound and it's kind of stuck with me is that slow can be smooth, you're methodical, you're getting things done, and without realising, because you're not making mistakes, because you're not having duplicate errors, that smoothness actually becomes quite fast, and you're actually getting a lot of data done like that, because you're not having to repeat it, you're not having to rerun things, you're not having to duplicate things because of mistakes before, because you were actually methodical and quite easy to do so. So try to avoid being these one-day wonders and have things nice and planned throughout the week. Even if it means that you're doing maybe half days, but it means that you're more likely to get things done. You can package it all up. You can analyze the data on the day, for example. You can have it nicely organized, and then it's done. That experiment's done. So in just to reiterate, remember this quote: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I've said it several times for a reason, because it's helped me look at life, not just research. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to waste time, you don't want to waste resources. Your supervisor is not going to be happy if you end up wasting resources either. And you yourself are not really going to be that happy now, are you? Wasting that much time and resources and funding. So try not to be a one-day wonder. Don't be me back in my PhD, because at the end of the day, it's going to be at a detriment to you long term. So slow, smooth, smooth, fast. If you haven't written it down now from the amount of times I've said it, I think you do. Put it in your notes, Apple Notes. If you have an Android phone, then I don't know what you use. I'm joking, use Google Notes. But mistake number 3. This one is definitely banter aside. Now, they wanted to be slightly light-hearted with the other two is because this is very heavy. And self-care is definitely, although I wouldn't say it's the biggest mistake, it was the most detrimental to me. Now, being a one-day wonder was the biggest mistake in terms of being the research side. But self-care definitely hurt me the most, or it kind of damaged me the most. There's a reason why that is that because of all the difficulties I faced in my PhD, I actually prioritized the research over my own physical and mental health, which is something you should not do. Now, sometimes I do feel a lot of people go too much in the work-life balance and perhaps get a bit soft that if it's 6 o'clock, oh no, I'll work too late. No, there are times out there is an imbalance where you may have to work a late night on odd occasions. But you should never ever let your mental and physical health be compromised so much so that the damage is irreversible. I'll say that again. Never ever, for anything, not just research, never let your physical and mental health be damaged so much so that it is irreversible. And obviously this context is about research, because the ill health, the bad habits, the poor diets, etc., became such an ingrained bad habit that it's still been difficult to shake off even now, even 4 years on from my PhD. And the research will still be there. It is not worth damaging yourself for that. The PhD will still be there. If you take a day off, believe me, even I used to feel like, oh no, I'm losing time. No, don't think of it as losing time. Think of it as you're gaining peace, you're gaining strength, you're gaining rest, because your body needs it. And at the end of the day, something that I found difficult, and many others might find it also difficult, is if you are healthy, your research will be as a consequence. That doesn't mean that because you're healthy, you'll get good data. No. Because you're healthy, you're more likely to work better. You're more likely to make less mistakes. You're more likely to have a chance of your data being reliable. Doesn't mean it's good or bad. We know this about research anyway. Let the data guide us. We're not trying to be biased and want the data to look like this. As long as it's reliable, as long as you looked at X, Y, and Z, you've made your methods sound, whatever the data says, it does. But if you are not healthy, then you may not make more mistakes, you may not be thinking clearly, you may not have a great relationship with supervisors because you're not in the best of moods, because you might have skipped a meeting, because you're working too hard. And then you're close to your loved ones, your friends, you might miss out on them, and they have massive importance when you're doing a PhD. So that lack of self-care was definitely something I tried to change and reverse throughout my postdoc and now, to try and do more things now than I ever did before, because I'm prioritizing me in that, looking after myself, if you see what I mean. So definitely, if you are a PhD student, even a master's student, undergrad student, if you are doing research, whatever level, whatever form, don't let that overtake your life. As difficult as it is to say, it is definitely something I would urge you all to do. Believe me, I've been through it, my thesis is there, you've seen me do all of these research videos. It is not worth ruining your life, because you don't need it to. You can do a PhD and be healthy. It is possible, believe me. So a lot of this, you don't want too much grind culture, too much hustle culture, the way it gets to the point where you're doing multiple, late nights and multiple all-nighters. No, I can categorically say, do not do that. Odd occasions, like once every 2 months or something, fair enough, because sometimes it is needed. However, don't let it overtake you, because the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is that sometimes the damage can be irreversible. Sometimes the damage takes so long to recover, whether it's the mental health, whether it's the physical ailments or the bad habits that become so difficult for you to overcome. Don't let that happen, especially towards the end. Now, a lot of you might be in your third year, and you want to leave this, leave that, leave that, leave that. No. Try your best to incorporate exercise. Even if you're meal prepping and just having less bad food and just more meal, maybe food that you've cooked at home, of course. And for sure, part of this self-care is not just diet and exercise and sleep. So make sure you spend time with people around you. Don't close yourself off because you want to get more data done. It is not worth it. Keep that in mind. Don't make the mistake I did. Please, please. Don't make the same mistake I did in terms of lack of self-care during your research. Believe me, you will be happier for it. So guys, that was a fairly somber note to end the video, but I do think it is relevant. I mentioned it in previous videos before. I'm not here to sugarcoat things, I'm here to try and share tips and advice. Sometimes they're really grand and amazing, sometimes they're quite personal, or they might hit home a lot more. But it's all for the reason to try and help you. That's all I'm trying to do here on YouTube and on Instagram. Trying to share tips and advice so then you don't make the same mistakes I did, which is what this video is all about. If you did enjoy these videos, and this one in particular, please do give it a like, do subscribe, because it'll be happy. No, it will be helpful. See, I'm not made a mistake there. Look, so we just make mistakes all the time. But no, it would be helpful for me and the channel if you could do so, and it'll help the algorithms of the rhythms get this video out to more and more people who may find it useful. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter where I'm going to share more advice, I'm thinking of doing perhaps more co-working sessions where a lot of us researchers can get together. It's in the video description down below. And again, if you want to follow me on Instagram, stay tuned for the reels and carousel posts, so that shorter form content you're more than welcome to over there. And in any case, I shall see you in the next one. Take care.